I've had the LG Tone FP5 for a little over 6 months now, and in fact, I didn't think I wanted to pick them up originally, but a few of my viewers really insisted that I review them, and I've not had any regrets ever since. So, how have these fared with me over the last 6 months? Well, on a build and detail front, well, the case is terrific because it's got a soft rubber feel. It's not picked up any scratches over time because I don't really move around much with these. I don't shove them into my pocket or backpack. I'm usually using them at home or in my studio because I'm cycling through a whole lot of other earphones as well. This has fared fairly well, and I think it's the soft rubber texture that it has that doesn't allow dust to really scratch its surface. So it does have a very premium feeling to it, but where I did think it would have a problem from the first time I reviewed it in depth was the design they've got on the earphone in particular has the outside section and the inner section. So there's a very tiny gap over there. And in fact, I think during my in-depth review, I found one speck of dust stuck between the plastics in that tiny gap. I think it's filled a little more now. Now, I don't think that little bit of dust is a real bother because these do have an IPX4 rating, so it should be fine. It's not really caused an issue. It's just I don't really like the way it looks when I look at it closely. Not that a lot of people are going to do that, but it has functioned well. It's not really hindered any of the touch controls, but just generally on a build front, I do wish that it was made slightly tighter. On a comfort front, these have to be one of the most comfortable earphones I've used. Now, I used to like the Nothing Ear ones a lot at one point in time until I shifted over to these because just the way the whole housing is made, it fits so snug inside the concha. And the gel tips provided have to be some of the softest and most comfortable ones that I want because there are times where I can forget that I'm even wearing these earphones because there's no pressure against the outside of my ear canal with these. In fact, these are so compact. I think they're a little shorter than the Nothing Ear ones. So much so, oddly enough, Soundcore did send me a set of Sleep A10s to test while sleeping, and those are really compact. Now, those fit inside the ear. You can't see anything sticking out. Now, those are the next level of sleep earbuds because you can't even see them, or sometimes you forget you're wearing them. The closest thing to that, if you have TWS earphones, I'd say is the LG FP5 because at least for me, it sits very snug. So when I'm wearing this earphone, even if I'm putting my head on the side of the pillow this way, there's no real pressure on the ear canal or even in the ear because it just fits so snug. It's not trying to cause any discomfort. Whether you're using it for winding down at the end of the day, going for a walk or run, it just fits very snug. It fits very secure. It is definitely one of the most comfortable earphones I've ever used. On a feature front, it's got most features like every other earphone does have. Now, it does have active noise cancelling, and in the app, it has a dedicated app that you can toggle between active noise cancelling off or even an ambient mode, where you do have an option to have a conversation mode or just a listening mode. So if you are going for walks or runs, it's worthwhile keeping it on that ambient mode. So you have a little feed in. And what's nice about the ambient mode is that it's not overly aggressive. It's a soft input that comes from the outside world, so you're not completely cut out. But having said that, the active noise cancelling itself is kind of like an ambient mode if you compare it to a whole lot of other earphones. Now, there are a whole lot of other earphones that I've been testing in a more budget price range, from the Realme Buds Air 3 to the Buds Z2. Now, those are anywhere ranging from 3,000 to 5,000 rupees, and some other earphones as well that are a little more expensive. But their active noise cancelling is certainly more superior than the LG FP5. I don't think one of their concerns was removing most of the noises with the active noise cancelling. It does a good job, however, of removing fan motor noises or most of the traffic that's going past my studio. I stay very close to a busy street. So it does manage to get rid of all of those noises, but it's not at a level where a lot of the affordable earphones are, which is a bit sad. But I can see the positive with this because there are a lot of people who don't like an over accentuation of the active noise cancelling. Some people tend to feel sick, they tend to feel nauseous, or their ears feel very weird. So with this level of active noise cancelling, I think it might suit a lot more people who are a little more sensitive to this. But of course, you do have the option of putting it off as well. Now, if you do want to make a few phone calls, you can make them via these earphones. Now, I usually send my viewers back to the in-depth review to see that call demo, but since I've had these for about 6 months, I'll do a latest recording so you can see how it sounds after all this time. So I'm calling from the usual busy street where I normally make these calls, just to give you a reference of the kind of environment that these earphones are going to be battling. So there is a lot of traffic behind me and some construction work going on as well. So the environmental noise cancelling on these has got a lot to battle with. So I have been on the camera microphone all this time, and I'll switch over to the LG FP5 microphone right about now.
So this demo should give you an idea of how exactly your voice is going to be carried over to your recipient for any of those phone calls you'll be making. Now, obviously, this is a worst case situation where you're in a busy street or you're walking down a busy street. If you are in a more quiet environment like your home, your office, or a quiet park going for a walk, your voice is bound to carry much clearer over onto your recipient than this, because there's a lot of algorithm work going on right now while I'm on this call. So I do hope that this is giving you a better understanding of these earphones, and I will see you back in the studio.
On a sound front, one thing that I do have to mention, if you do pick these up now, is what I felt when I first opened these out of the box. Now, these sounded like they were not worth very much when I first heard them, because they sounded extremely thin. There was no excitement, there was no body in the sound. It was very lethargic, so much so I genuinely thought it wasn't worth the price I was paying for it, despite it being heavily discounted. But the main thing to focus on here is the fact that Meridian has helped in the tuning of these earphones. They've collaborated with LG, and when it's out of the box, it's usually not on one of the LG tuning presets. So if you switch over to custom in the app that it has, that is a completely flat setting. There's no accentuation anywhere, there's no tuning done. So when you activate the, say, natural EQ with the Meridian tuning, which is the profile that I like the most, it just comes alive. All of a sudden, these sound so premium. In fact, even now, considering it's going for as much as it does, I think it sounds way more premium than that. In fact, I think a lot of people have quite literally compared these FP5s with the AirPod Pros. I haven't been able to do that myself. I hope to do that at some point in time. But there is a richness in this one sound. There is good imaging, there is good detail recovery. Soundstage is, well, it's very similar to other earphones, but the imaging of these does help you focus in on a lot more information than you could offer a little more budget set of earphones. So these do a very good job, especially if you like listening to much better recordings, if you listen to a lot of jazz and so on. If I have to say something negative about these when it comes to their sound, I'd say maybe the bass is a little too over accentuated for my liking in the natural mode, but thankfully you can choose between other presets and you do have a custom setting. So if you don't want to tweak it over and above the flat setting, you do have that option. So how have these fared on a battery front after all these months? Well, there is bound to be some battery degradation because these are tiny cells. But one thing I have done, I've always practiced with all my earphones, and I found that they live a lot longer because of this. I always give them a very slow charge. I never use a fast charger because they're very small cells. So if you're going to zap these batteries, they're going to die that much faster. So this set of earphones does very easily carry me for 2.5 to 3 hours of usage at a stretch before putting it back in the case. And even when I use it for that long, I'd say it's got maybe 35 or 40% left, which is a good healthy amount. But one thing I have noticed is when I really stretch the usage time of these, I've always found that the right earbud dies a little quicker than the left. So once that's off, I think the left earbud is sitting at around maybe 10%. So obviously the right earbud cells have diminished quicker than the left ones, but it's bound to happen over time. These products have very small cells, and it is bound to be expected from these. But overall, it is lasting me more than 2.5 to 3 hours, which is, I think, more than adequate. If you're a heavy user for a set of earphones, or you're making a lot of phone calls, the minute you talk about phone calls, it's going to eat into your battery usage that much more, because not only are you using your active noise cancelling, you're using your environmental noise cancelling. So expect half the amount of time. So if your earphones were to last you 4 hours, expect it to last maybe 2 hours, or sometimes even 1.5 hours. But one thing you can do to stretch out those call times is you can use this on mono mode, because each earphone can work independently. So usually what I do is, if I want to do that, if I want to stretch out time, I only use one earbud at a time if I'm on a phone call. And if one earbud dies out, you can just plonk that back in the case and use the next earbud, and you've got that much more time. So would I still recommend these earphones after a whole 6 months? Well, I haven't really had much of a problem with these earphones. They've been surprisingly nice to use. In fact, with me, the most important thing is how a set of earphones sound and how you can interact with them. So this has been fun. I do wish they had a slide control like the old nothing ear ones did, but not very many people are choosing to do that. These do have the tap controls which work perfectly fine. In fact, they're very sensitive to touch, so I've never really had an issue interacting with it. I don't really have to pick up my phone or take it out of my pocket if I want to change the song and so on. And on the sound front, these are one of my favorite earphones that I've heard in the recent past. It's not only full bodied, it's well detailed, it's very well constructed, its presentation is very enjoyable, especially when you're listening to good recorded music. It works great for EDM also, for that matter, despite it being as good as it is when it comes to its detail. The bass is quite hefty. It has a good amount of kick in it. So surprisingly, it doesn't eat into the mids like some bass heavy earphones do. These have definitely been tuned well. And if Meridian has handled the tuning, I trust them entirely with it. The only thing I see people not liking these too much, now this is one thing to be aware of if you're planning on buying these. If you're very particular about active noise cancelling, in the sense, if you're buying a set of earphones that you only want to use for noise cancelling to keep noise out and not listen to music for, these may not be for you, because these aren't the best at active noise cancelling. There are a whole lot of other earphones that you can get for a better price, which can do a better job at just knocking the world out. These aren't for that. These are more for if you want to listen to good sound, if you're on the go, or even if you're at home and you just want to enjoy music. These are more sound focused than anything else. So how much do these cost? Well, at the time of recording this video, they're going for about 7,499, but I have seen the price fluctuate a few times. In fact, very rarely will it go below 5,000. But honestly, if you do have the money to spend on this at 7.5 or 7 or 6.5, depending on where it sits, I'd say it's worth it, because I haven't heard anything in this price range that is at par with this. At least the overall detailing in the sound and the overall excitement of it is not there in any other set of earphones that I've heard. This is definitely value for money when it comes to the sound alone. And if you would like to buy these, I will leave the link down in the description below. But I do hope you've gotten some value from this video, and I hope I helped you make some sort of purchase decision. If you do want to support the channel, I'm sure you know exactly how to. But of course, thank you for tuning into Paul's POV for some sound advice.